The Master Sword, Excalibur, the Keyblade, Soul Edge, Soul Calibur, the Ultima Weapon, Yoru, the BFG, Anduril, Mjolnir, the Shard Blade, the Hulk Gloves that everyone wanted as a kid. These are a few legendary and iconic weapons throughout different forms of media that have managed to just live and crawl into every little bit of my personal mind palace. Especially the Hulk Gloves. Those things have lived in my head rent-free for years. I personally just think that giant hands or giant gloves is like peak fantasy weapon design, and I implore you to challenge me otherwise. I mean, like, look at it, it's marvelous. Anyways, point of this ramble is to point out the fact that I think that weapons are really cool, and I think if you're anything like me or within the same spaces, that you probably think weapons are pretty cool too. I mean, just for example, one of my roommates that just recently moved into my place, he had a replica Master Sword with him. One of our other roommates refused to let go of it when he realized that he had it. He just kind of held on to it like it was his own child while we played Expedition 33 on the couch. I think for me and a lot of other people, there is this kind of like fascination with weapons, especially considering how kind of like terrible, but like beautiful and just horrifying they can be at the same time. On top of that, there being like an element of like a big axe makes my monkey brain kind of go off. I remember being a kid thinking about how cool it would be if I was the one to pull Excalibur, or how cool it would be to use one of the Halo energy swords, or just how cool it would feel to wield Frostmourne, easily one of my favorite swords in all of fiction. One of my favorite things about a lot of legendary items and legendary swords or legendary weapons is this idea that they are coveted and sought after by a lot of people. Some people believe that it could bring them prosperity, it could bring them power, or it could be the way that they use to save their people. I love fantasy weapons and I love the fantasy genre, so when I got into Dungeons & Dragons, you know, the quintessential like fantasy tabletop role-playing game, I thought I would crack open the book and then be wowed by all these marvelous weapons that I would get to use. I expected to read through these things and have my back blown out in the Arby's by these legendary weapons. Unfortunately, nothing happened out of the Arby's, and I'm not necessarily very impressed or all that excited about seeing any of these weapons in my own personal home games. I don't feel any amount of excitement or just inspiration when I see these legendary items in, you know, the legendary tab of items in D&D Beyond or other websites. I can't really imagine any single character in these worlds seeking the singular +3 item out. They all just kind of feel a little bit bland to me, and yes, some of them talk. I don't know, not super interesting to me. For example, I know this isn't technically D&D, but when I played Baldur's Gate 3, right? Anytime I gained a legendary item, I didn't really feel anything. I didn't feel a single thing. Sure, it's cool to get like a +3 weapon because it makes your chances of hitting something like marginally better, but I don't know. Like when you put the legendary tag on something, I feel like it should be a little bit more difficult to get than pickpocketing a genie. And yes, I know he sends you to like a dinosaur world, but like at the same time, all I did was stealth through it for 2 turns and I got a legendary item. And then this item, it just didn't necessarily feel all that powerful. Yes, it had a singular cool ability, but I used it maybe 3 times because it honestly wasn't that useful. I just look at a lot of these weapons and a lot of these items listed out on D&D or like in official D&D content, and I don't know, the legendary weapons don't feel legendary to me. So how exactly can we make weapons in D&D feel more legendary? I'd like to talk about 3 specific iterations of like weapons in media, and then I kind of want to extract stuff from that and then use that to make my own weapon at the end of this video. I am a big fan of World of Warcraft, and one of my favorite experiences in WoW was the artifact system in the Legion expansion. Yes, that expansion was a grind, but I really liked it, and also it came out near the end of high school for me, so I had plenty of time. All the people in the 30s and 40s that I ended up playing with did not have the time to play that I did. You know, looking back on it, I think it's weird how many people my age had that very specific experience of like being a teenager and talking to people on WoW and like dealing with someone's divorce. Anyways, for those unaware, the Legion expansion of World of Warcraft basically had it so that every single, you know, subclass or spec of each class had their own unique legendary artifact weapon. Spent a lot of time getting attuned to like a order hall for your specific class, and then you do kind of a lengthy set of quests in order to get this legendary weapon. And then throughout the expansion, you spend a lot of the time upgrading this weapon over time, getting new skins for it, you know, doing quests to empower them, and getting new little things and trinkets to make them more powerful. A lot of the weapons that you would get in these quests were actually already legendary weapons in the lore of World of Warcraft. And if they weren't that, they were new weapons that were crafted around lore, around legendary figures themselves, like the legendary Ashbringer, which was a sword that was introduced in the lore and has been around for such a long time. And so it was such a pleasure to be able to wield it themselves in kind of an official capacity. Or the Blades of the Fallen Prince, which were made from the shards of Frostmourne, again, my favorite sword, and a sword that we helped shatter like 10 years ago at that point, like in real life. Or like the legendary dagger Xalatath for the Shadow Priest, which had a mind of its own, and it's become such a important figure in the World of Warcraft lore that every single cinematic that they're in shows like a full shot of their feet. The expansion did a really good job of not only giving players the chance to wield these legendary weapons, but making them kind of feel earned and making them feel like a very central part of the story, while also really playing into each of the classes' very specific class fantasy. It just felt really good to be like a very hunter, or, you know, a very powerful paladin. Like, you played into this fantasy of being a hero of this specific class. Critical Role very famously has a set of items called the Vestiges of Divergence, and I really like these as well. My favorite part about them is the fact that when you get them, it's not the end of the journey. They still can grow and become more powerful as the user gets more attuned with them. I like that idea because it makes it feel a little bit better than just getting a +3 weapon. There's an element that there's still like a mountain to climb even after you've climbed and gotten this legendary item. You still have room to grow and master something. The last reference that I would really want to go over is an artist that I follow called Sinlair. I hope I'm saying that right. They're like a comic artist, and you might have seen their works. They make a lot of 5e supplement weapons. And I think their art just looks really cool. I'm a big fan, especially since I grew up with like Warcraft fantasy. I love big, impractical weapons. I love chunky swords, chunky armor, and this just kind of fits that for me. It also has kind of like a JRPG style, which I think is interesting, but it just looks cool. I don't need realistic fantasy. I want things that look explosive and cool, and only these powerful heroes can wield them because they're so impractical. So from all that, the main thing that I really want to pull is like 5 main points on how to make legendary weapons feel a little bit more exciting, a little bit more fun. The first thing is that they should feel very legendary, that people are coveting them, people really want them. In lore, this is something that gives people either hope or despair. The second thing is that they should actually take quite a bit of effort to obtain. Third thing is that I don't think that obtaining the weapon itself should be the end of the journey. You should still be able to master it and grow the weapon with you. The fourth thing is that it should solidify a class fantasy. If you are a, arcane trickster rogue, this weapon should make you feel like the most arcane trickster rogue. And then 5, it should just kind of look cool and flashy. It doesn't have to be practical. I think legendary weapons are going to be legendary also because they just look interesting. I've mentioned before that I am starting a new campaign with my players. It's going to be set like in a water world location, and one of the main things is that they're doing a bunch of large kaiju fights and these very dramatic fights, and it's going to be a little bit higher level. This could be my first time dealing with a more higher level campaign, so that's going to be part of the challenge of it. But the other thing is I really want to populate the world with these legendary weapons that my players will have to seek out in order to deal with this large threat in the world. So I'm going to start going down the list of just like the subclasses, and I'm going to pick a random subclass and make a weapon revolving around that a little bit. Kor'Thar the Thronebreaker. When the world first came to be, the elements raged against one another in an endless battle for dominance. In the wake of their clashes left untamed fire and earth scattered across the material plane, giving way to the first true living creatures on Argonath. The first of the Keepers were born untrained, unkempt, reckless, and furious. They immediately fought back against their fire elemental overlords with every last part of themselves. In waves of rock and stone, the earthen creatures threw their entire beings into the fray, crushing themselves upon impact. Those that fell became weapons for the next generations. Stony legs and arms became weapons to clobber with. Under endless waves of elementals and keepers, pressure rose. Keepers were crushed under their own weight as they fought the first of the elemental lords. Warriors would appear adorned and weaponry formed from thousands of their own fallen allies. A pair of clubs would form from the endless battles. The final clash between Thar and the first Fire Lord. Thar would destroy himself in the final strike, being compressed into a molten club with the rest of his people, a manifestation of rage over generations. Since then, it has come into the hands of many berserkers in the past, calling upon those filled with rage to destroy their own controllers and become part of the weapon in the process. Many stories of such a weapon are hidden away as kings fear its power to tear down their existence. But those who have heard whispers of such a weapon are lured into the belief that such a weapon can break them of their chains. Being free is worth giving into rage.
This weapon you can consider a warhammer, and here are going to be the stats here. I've broken it down to 3 tiers as it evolves with you. It's dormant, awakened, and reborn. With each level, it gets a little bit stronger in dice. It goes from +1, +2, +3, and also the additional damage goes up a dice here. The main feature I wanted to play off of this because it's the Berserker Barbarians, I wanted to play into that whole, going into rage gives you exhaustion thing. So with this weapon, you no longer gain the exhaustion from going into your rage. The primary ability of this weapon, and I would like to say that my weapons do tend to be a little bit overtuned, is that Relentless Fury. With Relentless Fury, you begin attacking, and you do not stop until you either miss or you or your target is dead. Each hit does an additional +5 of bludgeoning damage, but as soon as you stop your assault, depending on how many hits you've made, you gain a level of exhaustion per every single hit that you've made. Please note that I use the optional D&D rules for exhaustion where it's just a -1 for each level. But additionally, if you manage to make 13 straight hits in a row, you do lose yourself to the weapon. You also become a part of it as you are crushed and pulverized by your own hits. With each level up in this weapon, you do gain maybe a feat or some extra stats, or perhaps you get a little bit better at doing certain things. For this weapon in particular, you are gaining features, and then also you are gaining a little bit of resistance to actually falling down from your own exhaustion. And then when you reach the final stage, the reborn stage of this weapon, you do gain the ability to have a final stand. If you were to go unconscious because of your exhaustion hitting max, you get the ability to just take an extra turn and ignore exhaustion for that turn. A little crazy and a little bit overtuned, but I really like something like this. Again, when I expect a legendary weapon, I want it to feel legendary. I want it to feel insane. I want it to feel like it gives you something that you can't do in the game normally. It shouldn't feel like, hey, this is just a +3 weapon. I hate that +3 weapons are legendary. +3 weapons should be very rare at best. With something like this, it gives you an insane ability. It comes with a massive drawback, but it lets you kind of do something that you just can't do otherwise. And again, if you aren't happy with these particular numbers, feel free to tune them down. I overtune my weapons because I like high-hitting spells, even though I don't like spells being overpowered in different ways. And then to make this kind of fit all the other points that I wanted to have with it, it also does have the stages, so it grows with the player. And then to make it feel more important lore, I have all this written out. And then to make it an actual part of my game, in order to acquire this, I'm going to have it hidden by some kind of king who's afraid of its power. So you have to go find which king it is. You have to, find which armory they're hiding it in, or if they're hiding it somewhere way worse. I would love for this weapon to kind of have to be maybe, break it out of a volcano. Something like that. Just make it a little bit difficult to obtain. But I think it's so important to just make cool legendary weapons that your players can look forward to, and then once they get it, they still have to grow it, because that's not the end of the journey. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't make boring weapons.